House of the Dragon, let's face it, is not really making waves in the news scene. We haven't heard shit about the casting. We haven't really heard anything about filming locations, and as far as we know it, they're still on the drawing room table in the sense that they haven't really come up with a plot line for the first season. I mean, as far as we know, this show has actually been in development since 2016, and here we are 4 years later with really no news. Does HBO plan on canceling House of the Dragon? I sure as hell hope not. Now before we get started, please do me a massive favor and slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be 100. Also, make sure you're subscribed, and then this is the most important part. Make sure you have your notifications turned on so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a video. Long night! Now let's start off from the very top. One of the most important things when developing a new show is the cast. You have to find the right characters in order to tell a story such as this, and we're comparing it to 8 seasons of Game of Thrones, which, regardless of how it ended, is still the greatest show to ever have existed on television. In short, they've got a lot to live up to, and the cast of this show is the most important thing. Now, we already know how George R. Martin's stories are told, so as far as plot lines and plot points and which way the story goes, George is going to have a heavy hand in that, so I'm not worried about that as much as I am about the cast. If we're basing the same development timeline off of Game of Thrones, then they started working on developing that show around 2009, as early as 2008 and 2007 when they had the meeting with George over that nice fat butter steak dinner and decided to take A Song of Ice and Fire and turn it into Game of Thrones. Now, in that 2 to 3 year gap, they were able to fill out the cast, film a pilot, and then completely scrap that pilot and then do the actual version of the show that we saw air in 2011. Now, that was like a 3 or 2, maybe even 4 year timeline. Here we are 4 years later, and we don't even so much as have information on who the cast is going to be or even potential rumors. Aside from what I get sent through the DMs, I haven't really gotten any rumors for casting aside from fan nominations. Now here's the thing, relating back to what I said earlier, they have to get this perfect. As far as we know, they're looking through hundreds, maybe even thousands of potential cast members for this show, and they want to get it perfect. So that casting news, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't really hear anything confirmed 100% until maybe the end of summer. Now another thing that I want to touch on really quick, which is another point for why this show may potentially be canned, but it doesn't really deserve that much time, is the fact that there's been no filming. Usually by now, we would have had some sort of filming leak for the next season of Game of Thrones, and the fact that this show been in development for 4 years, we haven't really heard or really seen any photos from the set. Well, I'll relate that back to my last point. They don't even have a cast yet, so the filming pictures or spoilers or whatever you want to call it won't likely be coming out until they actually have the cast decided and start filming. And we all know the main reason why that department has been pretty shy. Now, I'm no scientist, but I swear it probably has to do with the fact that we found out that Jon Snow was going to stab Daenerys in the throne room about 2 years before it actually happened. And that sort of leads me into my next point of why, House of the Dragon may actually be canceled, is the fan blowback. Now, many others, myself included, had some major issues with Game of Thrones Season 8. But in my book, does the last few episodes change the entirety of Game of Thrones? Fuck no. It is still the greatest show of all time, but I do not speak for everyone on the internet. And that's another point. Everyone on the internet is just people who made accounts and are very loud with their vocal opinions. We don't really know how the majority of fans, remember, there were like 16 million people viewing the show at one point. We don't know how the majority of fans actually feel about the show. It's safe, and people think it's safe rather, to generalize. Everyone thinks that, oh, everybody hated it. That's not actually the case. One thing is for certain about all of that blowback from Season 8. Time heals all wounds. Regardless whether it's a show or a movie, if it's got a massive following, there's going to be a large chunk of the core audience that aren't going to like how it ends. Whether that be because it's actually over and they can't realize that, or whether it really in general just was shitty writing, allowing for significant time to pass usually kills some of those negative opinions. The problem is, in this day and age, those negative opinions are now magnified tenfold and tend to stick around a lot longer than they used to. I guess what I'm getting at here in addressing the rumor that, HBO is going to cancel the show from fan blowback is it's nonsense. HBO would never cancel something that's been as massively successful as Game of Thrones has been. Why would they cancel a successor show, which has the potential to be just as big. In my opinion, the main reason why HBO hasn't gone full out announcing all this news for House of the Dragon is because they're waiting for some of that hate to die down. But on a side note, just sort of touching on that point of them wanting to just, I guess, move on with other shows, is the fact that they canceled their long-term lease that they had at Titanic Studios in Belfast, Northern Ireland, where they filmed the majority of Game of Thrones. They built sets there to film scenes for King's Landing, Winterfell, and a lot of the major sets that have become iconic with Game of Thrones. The lack of news for House of the Dragon and then canceling that long-term lease sort of doesn't really look good as far as are things moving forward like planned with House of the Dragon. I don't know. I mean, I'm really kind of stumped. You all let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Do you think that HBO canceling their lease in Belfast at the Titanic Studios was more so just that they can give the show a fresh start? We know that it's going to be in the middle of the Targaryen reign, and there wasn't exactly that many long nights then. So maybe they want to give the cast and the crew and everyone involved with the show a break by giving them a much warmer climate. Do you think that's what they're doing, or do you think they're slowly pulling information like canceling the lease, and then in a few weeks they may be announcing the cancelment of House of the Dragon? Let me know down below in the comment section. Now, before I move on with the exciting ass casting potential news that I have, I just want to do a quick rundown of the points that I made. The point being, the main one being, is House of the Dragon canceled. You know, we have the lack of casting, lack of filming, the fan blowback. The show's been in development for almost 4 years. They're no longer at Titanic Studios, and it's quite possible that maybe HBO wants to move on with other shows. And just to reiterate my counterpoints to all those, is that the reason why there's a lack of casting is because they want to get it right. That's the most important part about this show, along with the story, which we can trust that it being in the hands of George R. R. Martin, it's going to be taken in the right direction. The lack of filming, well, filming obviously won't start until after the cast is selected. Regardless of, you know, the fan blowback online, HBO with Game of Thrones is still its most successful show there, so they're not going to listen to some online opinions about whether they're going to move forward with making the most money possible. And then last but not least, you know, there's the point of them no longer being at Titanic Studios. Well, that could all be part of that new location. No winter during the time of the Targaryens, and like I said before, they want to give the crew and the cast and everybody involved with the show a nicer climate to work in. It may in fact make them work harder if they are in fact not freezing their nuts off. And you know, another option that I didn't really think about too much is the fact that they aren't actually filming anything right now per se in that cold northern environment, and they may not for the next year. So if that's the case, why would they keep paying for a lease on a studio that they're not actually using? Maybe they just ended it for a year and they plan on picking it right back up when they start filming House of the Dragon. Instead of Northern Ireland or Titanic Studios in Belfast being their main hub, maybe that becomes a secondary hub and they move a new one into Spain or even Croatia. They have filmed a large chunk of King's Landing scenes at these locations before in the past. But anyway, my counterpoints aside, let me know what you all think down below in the comment section on whether HBO is going to move forward with House of the Dragon or whether they're just waiting to announce that it's been canceled and they want to move forward with different television series. And now on to the juiciest part of my video. Now, a couple months ago, I received a message on Twitter, speaking of which, make sure you go follow me as Sir_Hunt, but I received a DM from an account that was quickly deleted. So it allowed me to look at the message, and upon reading it, I was like, "Pah, this is bullshit." I tossed it away and didn't really think much of it. It wasn't until a few days ago when I got another message from a person with the same username, except for it was a different account. They sent me a screenshot showing that their account had been taken down by Twitter after they attempted to tweet images of, get this, set pictures from the Game of Thrones movies. Now, I know, like all of you listening to this, my bullshit flags were raised up and the red alarms were going off until I saw screenshots of the images. Now, from what I can tell, most of what I saw were actually just camera rigs and like backdrops of sets that we've never really seen before in Game of Thrones. Now, real quick, I forgot to mention this before. Take this information with a grain of salt, as it's most likely bullshit, but still, let's just pretend. Now, this person, who shall remain anonymous, went on to state that the movie's in pre-production and is set to be released sometime in late 2022. Now, as if a Game of Thrones movie wasn't exciting enough, they apparently said the top person on the call list is Daenerys Targaryen, meaning that the whole movie is mainly going to focus on her. Now, like me, you're probably thinking when you hear first movie, you're like, what? Apparently, this person stated that there's plans of a total of 3 movies set to come out over the next 6 years. Now, they didn't actually confirm whether these movies, or whatever you want to call them, are going to be released in theaters, but if I had to guess, my bet would be yes. HBO would probably do a limited theater release and then put the rest of them on their new HBO Max app. But just sort of going through the rest of the information this person sent me, as far as I know, the first half of the movie is going to consist of mainly Drogon flying to try and get Daenerys resurrected. They stated that he flies to Volantis and drops Dany at the feet of a red priest. The group of red priests quickly realize that it's too late to bring her back, but they mention that there is a darker, more ancient magic that may bring her back. Then they decide to go to, get this, Asshai. Now, as far as from what we know on the television show, that's mainly where Melisandre is from, and there's a bunch of dark voodoo that goes on. But it goes into way more details in the novels, and in short, Asshai is actually the location of the world's darkest magic. Most of what you hear about Asshai in the books or rumors is very few characters have actually gone there, and the ones that have can't exactly be trusted 100%. But if there is in fact a bit of a time jump and Drogon is forced to take Daenerys somewhere else, or maybe the Red Priests are forced to take her to Asshai, that's somewhat believable, and it kind of makes me wonder if Jon wasn't doomed from the start, because there's a whole situation of him killing Daenerys in the throne room, and then the rumor of guest right, and that's sort of what happened to Robb at the Red Wedding. But I'll get into all that in another video. The person closes out by saying that after the first act of the movie, mainly consisting of Drogon trying to get Daenerys resurrected, we end up seeing the Starks and learn that King Bran isn't exactly adapting well to his new life in King's Landing. It's stated that he spends most of his time in past than present, basically what he did on the show in Warg. And Sansa in the north is told of this and starts plotting to set into motion a plan to gain more control in the south. The movie supposedly ends with Daenerys motherfucking Targaryen opening her eyes and mounting Drogon. It is stated that she is completely naked in this scene. Now, obviously, if those rumors are true, that puts me above the moon with happiness. And even if it doesn't happen, it still brings me eternal joy that we're going to be getting House of the Dragon. You all let me know down below in the comment section, what do you think about this movie rumor? Do you think there's going to be 3? Do you think there's going to be 1? Or do you think that this was all just fake? I plan on trying to make a House of the Dragon video at least once a week, updating you on casting, plot news, and just in general what the story is in Fire and Blood, so we know what to look forward to. Alright, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video, as the like goal is going to be 100, or I mean 420. If you could please, make sure you're subscribed, and then make sure you have your notifications turned on, so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a video. Super special shout out to every single person watching this video, and a super special thank you to every single member of my Patreon family over on patreon.com/SirHuntsReviews. I want to thank you all again so much for watching. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunts Reviews.